The making of this film was a true ordeal, but in the end, it became a lifeline for the studio, a career-defining success for its director, and a breakthrough moment for the science fiction genre. Movies Inside Out presents Aliens is the second film in the Alien franchise, released in 1986 under the direction of James Cameron. Why did it take 7 years to make a sequel? How is it connected to the Vietnam War and the Terminator? What caused the conflict between the American and British crews on set? And who brought peace between them? We're about to tell you all of that and more right now. The creation story. After the release of Alien in 1979 and its box office success, the production company Brandywine Productions began exploring the possibility of a sequel. But 20th Century Fox believed that sequels cost twice as much and earn half as much, and convincing them otherwise was no easy task.
I said no, and I mean it.
The studio's leadership at the time considered the first film's success a fluke, and overall interest in horror films was declining. The situation was further complicated by a lawsuit filed by the Alien producers against Fox over the film's profits. Only after the lawsuit was settled and new studio leadership was in place did talks of a sequel become more serious. In 1983, the search for a lead screenwriter began, and James Cameron was selected. The producers of the original Alien, David Giler and Walter Hill, had already been interested in collaborating with Cameron, though no suitable original projects had emerged. In just 3 days, James wrote a 42-page first draft, which was heavily based on another of his stories, Mother. The script received mixed feedback and was sent back for revisions while Cameron was working on the Terminator. As production on that film was delayed due to Schwarzenegger's commitment to another project, Cameron expanded the Alien script to 90 pages. The new version was better received by studio executives, but they still weren't ready to give Cameron the director's chair. That changed when the Terminator hit theaters and became both a critical and audience favorite. Cameron was then officially offered the chance to direct the Alien sequel, and he brought on his girlfriend, Gail Ann Hurd, as producer. James later said he wrote the film as an allegory for America's involvement in the Vietnam War. In his vision, the colonial Marines represented the US's conservative war hawks, while the xenomorphs stood in for the Vietnamese. He compared Ellen Ripley to war veterans suffering from PTSD. Those who, despite the trauma they've endured, are often the first to return to combat. The studio wanted to design new sets and alien models, but Cameron opposed that. He focused instead on developing the look of the alien queen, doing the design work himself. He also personally created the design for the dropship that delivers the Marines to the colonists' planet, because none of the proposed models met his expectations. These ships ended up resembling the unmanned hunter-killers from Skynet. In fact, Aliens includes several nods to the Terminator, and there's even a theory that the two films take place in the same universe. The road to completing the Alien sequel was anything but smooth. Every stage of production was marked by conflict. Fox pushed to cut the budget from $35 million down to $12 million. Cameron and Hurd briefly walked away from the project, returning only after the budget was slightly increased. It ultimately settled at $18.5 million. Casting. Casting brought a whole new set of problems. Cameron and Hurd insisted on bringing Sigourney Weaver back to reprise her role, but the executives at Fox were opposed. Negotiations with the actress were extremely tense. The two sides clashed over her salary, working conditions, and early concepts of the story. At one point, the studio even asked Cameron to write an alternate script without Ellen Ripley, but he flatly refused and flew off with Hurd on their honeymoon. They had just gotten married and threatened to walk away from the project if an agreement with Weaver wasn't reached by the time they returned. But nothing changed while they were away. Eager to direct Aliens, Cameron took matters into his own hands. He spread a rumor that he was developing a version of the script without Weaver. Shortly after, everyone agreed that the sequel could only work with her in it, and the contract was signed without further delays. Weaver herself liked the way Cameron had written her character and the relationship between Ripley and Newt. Relations between Weaver and Cameron were quite good. Although the director wasn't able to fulfill all of her requests, she never questioned the direction he wanted to take the story. In fact, Cameron appreciated her input about Ripley's emotional responses, which helped shape key moments in the film.
Get away from her, you bitch!
The actors playing the Colonial Marines underwent special training led by real-life Marines. The program lasted at least 2 weeks, except for Michael Biehn. He wasn't part of the original cast. James Remar was initially cast as Hicks, but he was fired after a week of filming. The official reason was creative differences with the director. Biehn got the call on a Friday and started work the following Monday.
See you, Hicks.
Dwayne. It's Dwayne.
Remar still appears in the film, sort of. A scene where the Marines enter the alien hive had already been shot, and since it was expensive to produce, only the footage where Hicks' face wasn't visible was kept. Sigourney Weaver, Paul Reiser, and William Hope also skipped the training.
Hi, Ripley. This is Lieutenant Gorman of the Colonial Marine Corps.
As Cameron felt that distancing them from the rest of the group would help reinforce the power dynamic between the civilians and the soldiers. As part of prep, all the actors were required to read Robert Heinlein's novel Starship Troopers. Interestingly, Al Matthews, who played Sergeant Apone, was the first Black Marine in real life to be promoted to the rank of Field Sergeant during his service in Vietnam.
All right, sweethearts, you heard the man and you know the drill, assholes and elbows. Hudson, come here. Come here.
Jeanette Goldstein misunderstood the tone of the film and showed up to her audition dressed like a 19th century Irish immigrant. She was likely auditioning for the role of Corporal Farrow, while the part of Private Vasquez was initially offered to professional bodybuilder Rachel McLish. However, McLish demanded that all curse words be removed from her dialogue, which Cameron refused. He convinced the producers to give the role to Goldstein instead. To play Vasquez, Goldstein dyed her hair black, wore dark brown contact lenses, and had her skin tone darkened with makeup. Her period costume from the audition became the butt of many jokes on set, and Cameron even added a few such lines to the script. The crew brought the story up again on the set of Titanic, where Goldstein finally did play an Irish immigrant.
I only need to know one thing: where they are.
Aliens was filmed in the UK to save costs. Shooting in the US would have been twice as expensive. But this came with the condition of hiring local actors. Key roles were given to Americans who lived in the UK, such as Goldstein, Rico Ross,
I hate this job.
and Mark Rolston.
Hey, Hicks. Man, you look just like I feel.
The same rule applied to the casting of Newt. Auditions were held at schools near American military bases, which is how they found Carrie Henn. Her mother was British, her father American. Despite having no acting experience, she formed a great bond with Weaver. Unlike most children trained in commercials, she didn't smile after every take.
My mommy always said there were no monsters, no real ones, but there are.
Interestingly, Carrie auditioned alongside her real-life brother Christopher, who was cast as Timmy. However, he only appears in the extended version of the film.
Timmy, they've been gone a long time.
It'll be okay now. Dad knows what he's doing.
Lance Henriksen nearly got denied entry into the UK when he arrived from the US. He had been rehearsing Bishop's knife trick and brought an entire collection of knives with him for Cameron to choose from.
I may be synthetic, but I'm not stupid.
Customs officers were understandably alarmed by the contents of his luggage. The filming process. Filming took place at Pinewood Studios in the village of Ivor Heath, west of London. Neither James Cameron nor Gale Ann Hurd had worked in the UK before, and they were surprised to find that the production process was very different from what they were used to in the US. In America, 12 to 14-hour days were standard, and crews were willing to skip meals and push through discomfort for the sake of the creative process. The British crew, on the other hand, expected to finish work at a reasonable hour and take regular breaks throughout the day. Cameron and Hurd saw them as lazy and arrogant, while the American actors believed the British didn't know how to work. Filming could be halted in the middle of an intense scene for tea, a pub lunch, or simply because the workday was over.
We have blueberry, raspberry, ginseng, sleepy time, green tea with lemon and honey, liver disaster, ginger with honey, ginger without honey, vanilla almond, white truffle, blueberry chamomile, vanilla walnut, constant comment, and Earl Grey.
The British crew, in turn, viewed Cameron and Hurd as inexperienced, overly demanding, and arrogant. They didn't understand why an unknown director had been given a major production like Aliens. To earn their respect, Cameron organized a screening of the Terminator, but most of the crew ignored the invitation as the film had flopped in the UK box office. Ideally, Cameron and Hurd should have accounted for British Union rules when creating the production schedule. Instead, the set became a battleground of mutual insults, resulting in several controversial firings, production delays, and even a strike. The future of the film was in jeopardy again, and Cameron considered relocating production out of England. But that would have ended his career, as Fox had already sunk millions into the studio and sets. Fortunately, the conflict was resolved thanks to Sigourney Weaver. Being half British, she was respected by both sides. She arranged a meeting where Cameron apologized for his harshness, promised to respect labor rights, and convinced the crew of the importance of their work. When the 75-day shoot wrapped in December 1985, Cameron sighed with relief. Addressing the crew, he said the one thing that had kept him going was the thought that he'd leave Pinewood and never return. He kept that promise, though he did stay connected with one crew member, production designer Peter Lamont, who later worked with Cameron on True Lies and Titanic. The alien hive scenes were shot in a decommissioned power station. Many of the shots showing aliens crawling through tunnels or vents were actually filmed in a vertical shaft, with the camera placed below and actors descending headfirst on cables. Most of the film was lit in a bluish tone to give it an otherworldly alien look. The Colonial Marines camouflage was custom designed to suit this lighting, which made the uniforms appear very different under natural light. Interestingly, 3 types of smoke were used on set, one of which was later banned from film production. Cameron asked the actors playing Marines to personalize their gear with custom touches, a nod to the Vietnam War, where soldiers often decorated their helmets. Cynthia Dale Scott, who played Corporal Dietrich, wrote Blue Angel on her helmet after the Marlene Dietrich film, while Bill Paxton wrote his wife Louise Newberry's name on his armor. Lance Henriksen also wanted to contribute creatively. He planned to wear contact lenses with double pupils in the lab scene where Bishop stares ominously at a Marine through a microscope. But Cameron thought the effect made Bishop scarier than the aliens, so the idea was scrapped. The armored personnel carrier was built from an aircraft tug bought from Heathrow Airport. The team had to reduce the vehicle's weight from 75 tons to 30 tons. The bathroom in Ripley's apartment used toilets repurposed from British Airways planes. Since none of the shuttle models from Alien, the Narcissus, and the Nostromo had been preserved, the set and FX crews had to rewatch the original film several times to recreate their look and interiors. The mechanism that moved the facehuggers inside the lab tubes was reused from Cameron's Piranha 2, The Spawning. It took 9 people to operate the creature, 1 for each limb and the tail. Animating the alien queen took even more. 14 to 16 people were required to control what was, at the time, the most complex and largest puppet ever created. It was so massive it wouldn't fit in the elevator set, so her tail and the back wall were removed during those shots. Smoke, dim lighting, and a black curtain helped hide this. 2 queen heads were built, one durable and heavy, the other lightweight. Both featured hydraulics and cable mechanisms, while the heavier one included an articulated inner jaw and a movable neck. The alien hive set was later reused in Tim Burton's Batman, 1989, for the Gotham City chemical plant. For the scene in which Ripley escapes the Queen while carrying Newt, a life-size doll was used. Sigourney Weaver was experiencing back pain and couldn't lift Carrie Henn. The hypersleep chamber set on the Sulaco was built on a tight budget. Only 4 pods were constructed, each costing $4,300, but mirrors were used to create the illusion of 12. The smart guns were mounted using Steadicam gear. The entire rig weighed 66 to 88 pounds, so Velcro straps weren't enough. They had to be taped directly onto the actors. As for the weaponry, in the scene where Vasquez shoots a xenomorph with a shotgun, Jeanette Goldstein couldn't handle the recoil. She was replaced in that shot by producer Gail Ann Hurd, the only woman on set with experience using such a weapon. The iconic knife trick scene originally featured only Bishop, but Henriksen felt something was missing and suggested including Hudson. Nearly everyone except Bill Paxton, who played Hudson, was informed of the change. During the reshoot, the footage had to be redone because the sped-up effect looked fake, and during the retake, Henriksen accidentally nicked Paxton's pinky with the knife. Bill Paxton was constantly apologizing to Carrie Henn whenever his character swore in front of her. Later, she admitted she didn't mind, mostly because she didn't even know what the words meant. Paxton frequently improvised, and many of his ad-libs made it into the film. For example, the legendary,
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over. What the f are we gonna do now? What are we gonna...
and likely,
We're on express elevator to hell. Going down.
weren't in the script. Like most films, Aliens wasn't shot in order. The Marines' first on-screen appearance was one of the last scenes filmed. Cameron wanted the actors to bond off-screen so they could authentically portray camaraderie. The Aliens cast didn't just bond with each other, they also became friends with the crew filming Full Metal Jacket nearby. The 2 teams even threw joint parties. Both films featured Marines, and both casts included real-life Vietnam vets. Al Matthews in Aliens, and R. Ali Ermey in Full Metal Jacket. Coincidentally, both actors, who portrayed sergeants, passed away in 2018. Once filming ended, post-production brought new challenges. Cameron was dissatisfied with editor Ray Lovejoy's work and considered replacing him with Terminator editor Mark Goldblatt. Lovejoy had a slower work style, but upon hearing he might be fired, he locked himself in the editing suite for the weekend, cut together the entire final battle, and presented it to Cameron. Impressed by the results, Cameron let Lovejoy finish the film. Lovejoy later received an Academy Award nomination for Best Editing. Interestingly, the editing of Aliens is so precise that the 15-minute countdown in the movie lasts exactly 15 minutes in real time, both in the theatrical and extended editions.
You now have 15 minutes to reach minimum safe distance.
Cameron also clashed with composer James Horner. The director gave him too little time to score the film, forcing Horner to reuse parts of his previous work. Post-production tensions escalated to the point that Horner vowed never to work with Cameron again. Worse, Cameron edited the music himself, something that infuriated Horner. Still, when he was later asked to score Titanic, Horner agreed. Movie mistakes and errors. Aliens has its fair share of bloopers and errors. We've already mentioned the knife scene and how the sped-up footage makes background characters move at an unrealistically fast pace. 57 years pass between the events of the first and second films, but the Nostromo ship remains unchanged. However, the equipment on board looks and sounds more advanced than in the original. This is noticeable in the opening scene when the monitor powers on. Ripley's head also changes position in cryosleep, first tilted left, then suddenly facing forward. Her clothing changes too. At the end of the first film, her collar has a red trim, which is missing in the sequel. The collar also appears tighter than before. When Hicks first gives Ripley the locator bracelet, the device emits a steady beeping sound. But near the end of the film, when she finds the bracelet again, it beeps much more frequently, even though she's standing about the same distance from it as before. When Hudson exits the cryotube aboard the Sulaco, several suction pads are attached to his chest. In the next shot, after Apone jokes about slippers, the top 2 pads are gone, even though Hudson never removed them. Earlier, the commander lights a cigar immediately after waking from hypersleep, though in reality, frozen tobacco would have become unusable. When Vasquez enters the north airlock, she points her weapon toward the passage twice, first from below, then from above. Earlier, the team splits into 2 groups, one of 5 and one of 4. But when we see the second group, it suddenly has 5 members, even though everyone from the first group is still ahead. In the extended version of the film, when Burke, Ripley, and Lieutenant Gorman enter the colony building, they're soaking wet from heavy rain. But just seconds later inside, their clothes appear completely dry. During the elevator escape scene, the acid burns on Hicks' face switch positions. In some shots, they're missing. In others, they're on the left side. Though based on how he moved when the acid splashed, the burns should be on the right. When Ripley battles the alien queen using the power loader, the mechanical arm first grabs the queen's neck, but in the next shot, it's gripping her face. After the queen throws the loader, the yellow light on top breaks, yet later, it's fully intact and still working. When the queen falls into the airlock, the tip of her tail is missing, but moments later, it's back again. Right after Ripley finds Newt, she hands her a mug of hot chocolate. The mug's handle flips direction between shots. As Gorman, Burke, and Ripley oversee the Marines mission, Gorman's headset moves around his cap, from below the brim to above, to completely underneath. The same thing happens with Ripley's headset later on. Its cord also alternates between being wrapped around the mic stand and not. When the dropship detaches, it immediately falls as if pulled by gravity. But the Sulaco is in stationary orbit, so the ship should have remained in place unless powered down. Inside the dropship, Corporal Farrow wears mirrored sunglasses, but the planet is overcast and rainy, making the glasses not only useless, but also a visual hindrance. The reflections of studio lights and monitors are clearly visible in them. One of the most famous bloopers occurs near the end of the film, when Ripley selects her weapons on the dropship and assembles them in the wrong order. This mistake was corrected in later editions. There are also plot inconsistencies. For example, it's highly unlikely the massive xenomorph queen could have sneaked onto the dropship unnoticed, and no one detected the extra weight. And it's hard to believe that someone as slender as Ripley could hold onto a ladder while a huge alien queen was hanging from her, and both were being pulled into space. Deleted scenes. The director's cut of Aliens runs 154 minutes, but releasing the film in that length was seen as a commercial risk. James Cameron was unsure how to shorten it without making it feel rushed. Eventually, producer Gail Ann Hurd suggested cutting a few scenes entirely. For example, the subplot about Ripley's daughter. Interestingly, she was portrayed by Elizabeth Inglis, who is Sigourney Weaver's real-life mother. Another removed sequence was an early scene showing the colony and the derelict ship. Cameron hesitated to cut it since it was the only direct connection to the original film, but ultimately admitted that the plot still worked without it. The final theatrical cut was trimmed to 137 minutes, and the deleted scenes were restored in a special edition. Sigourney Weaver was extremely unhappy with the theatrical version. She even threatened to never appear in another Alien film. Even the director's cut differs from the 1985 script. In that version, Ripley gives the Marines a more detailed briefing on the xenomorphs. Newt asks Ripley to adopt her, and there's a scene where Bishop encounters an alien in the tunnel. That last moment became the subject of rumors. It appears in the film's novelization, and some claim to have seen it in TV airings. However, it's absent from all bonus materials, and likely was never filmed, possibly due to time. The script also included a scene in which Ripley, while rescuing Newt, runs into Carter Burke, who has been cocooned. He begs for help, and Ripley gives him a grenade. Unlike the Bishop Tunnel scene, this one was definitely filmed but never included in any version of the film. In an even earlier script draft, Ripley, Newt, and Hicks were all to be cocooned. Additionally, the script mentioned that Vasquez and Drake had served time together in the same juvenile prison, but this is never referenced in the final film. Worldwide recognition. The final cut of the film was completed just 1 week before its premiere. Because of this, the studio didn't have time to organize test screenings. Only a private showing for the executives at Fox was held. The film was met with enthusiasm, and later analysts stated that Aliens had saved the studio, which was in desperate need of a hit at the time. Interestingly, after the initial screening, Fox executives had only one complaint: that all the money had been spent on sets rather than special effects. In reality, most of the sets were actually miniatures or visual effects, as Gail Ann Hurd happily explained to the studio heads. The artists who created these models were thrilled that their work had successfully fooled the studio financiers. After the official premiere in July 1986, Lance Henriksen was so overwhelmed that he was speechless. He told Cameron he would write him a letter to express his feelings properly, though he never did. The actor had even promised himself he would quit acting if this role didn't turn out to be a success. In the end, Aliens became one of the most important films of his career. Henriksen wasn't the only one thrilled. The audience loved it too, and the film became the top-grossing movie of the summer season. Global box office totals range from 131 to 183 million. Figures for the US and Canada vary greatly. Most critics agreed that Aliens was a worthy successor to the original. The jury of major film awards agreed as well. The film received 7 Academy Award nominations, winning 2 for Best Sound Editing and Best Visual Effects. Sigourney Weaver was also nominated, becoming the first actress in history to receive an Oscar nomination for a role in a science fiction action film. This marked an important milestone for the genre. Her salary was $1 million, 30 times what she was paid for the first film. That amount only grew in future installments, even as the Alien films became less profitable. Aliens had a major impact on pop culture. Jeanette Goldstein's character, Private Vasquez, became the inspiration for Tasha Yar in the series Star Trek: The Next Generation. Goldstein herself was even considered for the role. The Alien franchise as a whole was the primary inspiration for Nintendo's Metroid series. The second game in the series even featured a Queen Metroid. The film also had a lasting effect on Carrie Henn's life, though not all of the changes were welcome. Her character delivers one of the most iconic lines in the film.
We better get back, because it'll be dark soon, and they mostly come at night. Mostly.
But the actress hates that line, and her friends would tease her about it from time to time. Since Aliens was released, the sci-fi franchise about battling hostile extraterrestrials has expanded with sequels, novels, comics, and video games. In 2022, work began on a new installment in the universe, Alien Romulus. The film premiered on August 15, 2024, with young actors Kaylee Spenny, Archie Renault, and Isabella Merced in the lead roles. Which of the first 2 Alien films is your favorite?